Hello and welcome back to Walk the Cinema podcast. Today we are continuing our Oscar coverage with Steven Spielberg's newest film, The Fabelmans.
So this was not a movie I was looking forward to watching, but so we're both not Spielberg fans per se.
Not per se. I'd say we like them enough, just not anything crazy.
I love Schindler's List.
I haven't seen Schindler's
List. And that's his only movie that I truly love. While I think he has good movies, like Saving Private Ryan is good, it just doesn't incite anything in me.
Yeah, you liked West Side Story last year.
No, I didn't. I thought it was fine. You hated it.
I didn't hate it, I just didn't love it.
I thought it was fine. I didn't love it or hate it. It's kind of same with this movie, where I don't love it, but I don't hate it. Mm-hmm. I know a lot of people do love it. I fail to see why.
I personally think it's because it's like the idea behind the movie is pretty good, you know, where it's kind of semi-autobiographical, but, you know, taking a little bit of liberty. It's not him calling himself Steven. Our main character, his name is Sammy. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I think that the issue that we might have with it a little bit is we've already seen something very similar to this, and I think that's done a lot better. And that was with Cinema Paradiso, which is an Italian movie. But
that movie's great, and that movie incites the sense of nostalgia that this just doesn't do for me. Mm-hmm. And that movie is about movies, and this...
It's not necessarily about movies. It's not,
yeah. It kind of, like, plays a major role, right? Because it's Spielberg talking about kind of his childhood, or at least the inspiration for the movie was kind of what he experienced. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it shies away from it. And I think it shies away from it so it doesn't get labeled as a movie about movies.
Right. It is a movie about him, you know, finding his passion for movie making.
But it starts as a movie about movies, and I think that's immediately, like, the opening shot immediately took me out. Because it starts with, like, his father explaining what a movie is. And like, this is your first movie at a movie theater. Aren't you excited? And it's immediately pandering to me. And Spielberg has been labeled before as, like, the king of Oscar bait. And last year, I think it's a pretty good example of Oscar bait. Because you're remaking West Side Story. And this year, it's an even better example of Oscar bait. It's about movies. It's autobiographical. It's just... There's so many things pointing at it being Oscar bait. And if anyone else made this movie, we wouldn't be talking about it.
Yeah, probably.
This movie only got nominated for Best Picture because Spielberg made it. It also got nominated because people like it, obviously.
Yeah, and I think...
But if another director made it, people would still like it, but it wouldn't be talked about in the Oscars.
I just think that, you know, it is somewhat relatable, I would say. And I think a lot of people agree with me, at least anyone who's ever been interested in making movies or who has made their own movies, because I think a lot of kids that have grown up now, especially, it's a lot easier to make a short film than it was, you know, back in the 50s, where now we can, like, use our phones to create stuff.
Actual film and, like...
Yeah. Nowadays, you can just do anything. You can do it all on your computer.
Yeah, you can edit it all on your phone. You don't even need a computer.
Exactly. So I think, like, that it's a little bit relatable in that sense, because even I had some relatable things to it. Like, there's a scene where a young Steven Spielberg, Sammy Fabelman is showing his movie that he made with his little Boy Scout troop, and he's showing it to all the Boy Scouts and presumably their family and stuff like that. And they're all laughing and having a good time. And I mean, I've done that before where I made a short film with my friends for a class assignment, and there is some type of joy being like, oh yeah, I did create this. I'm making people laugh. Like, that's a good feeling.
And the scene was cool, and like the how we got the shots in the toy guns by actually piercing the film with I don't remember what he used, but
like a pin, like a needle.
like a needle pierced some holes in the film to make the light shine through. That was really cool, and it's like, yeah, there's a lot of little cool things. I definitely like the ending scene a lot, which I guess I'm not gonna get into now because it's the ending scene. But as a whole, like as a story, it's not very engaging to me. It's very loosely structured, which is the point. But it's not super engaging. I wasn't super into any of the actors, at all. Not even remotely close.
No,
to caring for them.
I also think that the story, which is like, it's kind of hard to critique the story, I think, because it is kind of his life. So it's not, but I feel like movie makers have to, embellish a little bit. And I feel like this felt too, like, this is what happened. My mom had an affair.
Right.
And ended up marrying him.
It's very matter of fact.
Yeah.
Where, like, there's not a lot of pushback after she has the affair.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't result in a lot of drama or anything. She kind of has it. She kind of cries on his shoulder.
Yeah.
But that's pretty much it. Like, there's not a lot of effect to it.
No. And even when they, like, announce that they're going to get divorced, it's, like, for that moment, and then they're all just kind of like, well.
Yeah, the divorce gets glanced through, which is fine.
Yeah, I mean...
It's not a movie about divorce.
No, but I just think, like, in terms of storytelling, it is kind of... It does fall flat, and you're kind of, like... You find everything annoying with every character, I think. Because, like, his mom, Mircy, something like that, she's played by Michelle Williams, and I just don't like her as a character, but I can tell that, like, Steven has a very deep connection with his mother because they're both artists. Like, she was a pianist, and I think that connection overrides the kind of disappointment that you have.
I do get that he's also, like, really loves his mother because he focuses on that character so much that sometimes she comes across as the main character more than Sammy.
A little bit sometimes.
Also, Sammy kind of just, I don't know if it's the actor or the way it's written, but his personality is incredibly flat. At least to me. Like, I agree. It doesn't incite any passion or anything, even for movies. Like, he wants to make movies, and we're supposed to understand that, and we do because it's said explicitly that he wants to make movies. But the character itself doesn't act super passionate about making movies.
Yeah, and I think that this is kind of interesting, though, because I feel like it does kind of show that Spielberg is kind of in a different league than other filmmaking greats. So, for, like, example, let's take Fellini,
which took his Best Director nomination the year Jaws came out.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Fellini was the one that took his spot for Best Director.
Crazy. But with his kind of autobiographical thing, you kind of understand his movie-making journey. And, like, how deeply he loves movies. And you can kind of see that with, like, Quentin Tarantino, too, where he loves movies, and that's why he makes movies.
Right.
Like, he'll watch any and everything. With Spielberg, which I think this is why a lot of the general public like him, but that I feel like he's never going to be, like, revered as an artist, per se, is because he's not really making movies. He doesn't care about movies. Like, in general. Like, in the grand scheme of things.
I think a lot of the stuff he talked about was very surface level.
Yeah.
Like, we're ending the movie with John Ford. With John Ford's great. Yeah. I love John Ford. I was really excited that, like, that was a little David Lynch cameo or whatever. But it's John Ford. It's not like you're, like, studying film history to find out about John Ford's existence.
Right. Yeah.
He made John Wayne. You know?
Yeah.
Everyone knows that. So it's like, there's different levels of people that are into movies. There's people that, like, truly love movies, and their personality and their friend group is that they're the movie person.
Yeah.
But their favorite movies are Jaws and Jurassic Park, which are Spielberg's.
Yeah.
But that's not the depth of, like, and not that Tarantino is great, but his film knowledge is great. Where he talks about stuff that played at 2 theaters in the 70s, and that's it. And has a VHS release that he owns. And that's how he watches these movies. It's not the surface level stuff.
Which I think is fine, right? Like, not everyone can be.
No, of course. I mean, there's a reason that
level.
Spielberg's movies make a crap ton of money, and like you can recognize 20 of his movies before even like a Nolan movie. Like,
yeah.
Like another level of film nerd is like loving Interstellar and Inception, but the popular crowd is going to recognize Jaws, Jurassic Park, Saving Private Ryan above any Nolan movie, and that's 3 movies that Spielberg made.
Yeah. And I think that, like, not everyone has to be, like, a film buff in order to make films, I guess.
Definitely
Case in point, like, I've talked about it before. I made movies without really having any idea of, like, any type of history of movie making or history of films in general. I just, liked creating stuff. I liked writing scripts and stuff like that. So, I mean, similar concepts. So I think a lot of people can relate to that. Like, he is a little bit more like general audience friendly than a lot of other things,
Definitely. His movies are like just super soundly made. I think he's more passionate about making them than watching them.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
And that kind of works for him because he polished these movies by learning how to make them really well.
Yeah, and the same thing with, like, you take Jurassic Park, like, that is a lot of practical effects with the dinosaurs, So he did kind of, like, wanted to do it, and he did it. Like, he figured a way out how to do it. And that's commendable, I would say. And I really do like Jurassic Park, the first one. Mm-hmm. Like, I think it's a really good suspenseful movie. And...
Right.
He's
someone that perfected the basics and then perfected a lot of other things, but without making anything that would be, like, too daring. Like, they're daring from a movie-making perspective, but not from, like, asking a lot from the audience. His movies really don't ask a lot from you, I feel. And this one might be the one that asks the most. But it kind of fails at giving any type of award for you for trying,
Yeah.
Like, if you're gonna ask me to try and give this a certain level of, I don't know, like give it a break because we're trying to do something different, you gotta reward me with actually doing something that's gonna wow me or something that I haven't seen before. And I feel like everything I saw in this movie I could see in a million other movies. Like, you have a mother. There's a bunch of filmmakers that made movies about their relationship with their mother, or about their childhood, or about how they went to the movies as a kid and that changed their life. Like, there's just a lot of that.
Yeah, and I think there's nothing in this that's kind of has that pizzazz or wow factor to make this different from all of those other ones. But I mean, this movie is very solidly made. Like, the pacing is pretty okay. I think some of the scenes go a bit long. We both kind of agreed on that.
Yeah. But I think that's kind of the break that he's asking us to give him. Whereas, like, I'm Steven Spielberg, trust me. This movie could be an hour and a half, but it's 2.5 hours. And it has scenes that could be cut out. So just straight up. Like, we don't need to see him show a whole movie to a crowd. And we also watch the whole movie with the crowd. We don't need to actually see the movie. But he wants to show that. Because he has his reasons, I'm sure. I'm sure he, like, actually used techniques he used as a kid.
Yeah.
Where, like, he used the camera he used as a kid or something like that. I don't know for a fact. But that would be cool, and that would be something I would imagine he would do. But we don't need to see it. But he's Spielberg, so he can do that. He can flex on camera for us. But it does come out as self-indulgent for that same reason. Because you're showing us stuff because you're Steven Spielberg, and because you know people are going to watch it. And because you know the Oscars are going to love it because it's kind of about movies, but it's kind of about you. And the Oscars love those two things. So it is self-indulgent. I used a different word when we were watching it that you didn't find amusing.
Correct, but that's okay. I don't know. And then there's, like, certain things that really take me out of it, such as Seth Rogen being in it, just in general.
He's just in it for way longer than I would have thought.
Yeah, and it kind of has to do with, because in the movie, that's who his mom has an affair with, is his dad's best friend, Benny, played by Seth Rogen. And, you know, he moves with them to Arizona, which is kind of like red flag, you know? I think it's kind of like hindsight, too, where it's like, oh, in hindsight, I probably should have realized that my mom and Benny were having an affair because, you know, he moved to Arizona with us.
Because of her, because she was very insistent to her husband that...
Like, they needed to go... Like, he needed to get a job at the same place. So it's very similar to that. And then, you know, she ends up with Benny at the end. But I don't know. And, like, some of the things that his... Like, I feel like he did not make his mom a likable character, in my eyes.
No.
But I think he thinks she's likable. That's the thing.
Because he likes her.
Yeah.
But I think she comes out as, like, the free spirit that's selfish.
Yeah.
And, like, cares more about how she feels. Because you never see her really taking care of her kids' feelings too much.
Yeah.
Or even her husband. Which her husband in this movie is Paul Dano.
Yeah.
Incredibly boring performance.
Yeah.
Very flat, like pushover. Doesn't add anything to any scenes.
Yeah. And I feel like the way that he was written, it's kind of like, I understand why he would have more resentment towards his father, because his father doesn't, like, you know, cultivate his hobby or interests, you know, because at first he kind of just starts making movies as a hobby before it kind of turns into something more. But his father is never supportive of that, and he always wants him to be like an engineer, and they have to move several times because he just wants to further move along his career, which, you know,
sure,
it's whatever, he gets mad about it. But I feel like we as the audience don't have that same, like, anger towards the father.
No.
Because he is kind of weak, and it's just kind of like, he's not doing anything egregious.
I'm listening to you describing this, and the more I hear, it's more like, okay, this is just a coming-of-age story about someone that happened to become a movie maker.
Right.
More than it is a story about a movie maker.
Yeah. And
a lot of people say this is a love letter to film. West Side Story, I feel, is more of a love letter because it's Spielberg being like, I love these classic movies I can make again. And this is kind of coming of age, kind of like an origin story for a filmmaker, but it's more of like a coming of age for a kid that happened to become a filmmaker. The story would be very similar if you became an architect.
Yeah, that's valid.
So it's not... I don't know, I don't get this being a movie about movies. Like, it's being labeled as that. I'm sure that's marketable, but it's just not the impression I get. I just wish it was more about movies. But it ends with John Ford. Mm-hmm. It ends with a studio... Executive, perhaps? I don't remember what he was, but...
He worked for CBS.
He says, oh, you can meet the greatest ever filmmaker. And in my head, I was like, it's John Ford. That's the only name that makes sense to me. And it was John Ford. I was very excited. You were more excited that it was David Lynch that was playing John Ford.
Yeah, I just thought it was funny.
It is funny. I think a lot of people like that, which, whatever. I get that people like David Lynch, but, like, that's not the reason why you'd like David Lynch. Just, it's that meme from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood where DiCaprio points at the TV. Like, I recognize that, so it's funny. Mm-hmm. Whatever. But I like that. I like that he gave him, like, framing tips.
Yeah.
And then kicked him out. It was funny. And that part was like, okay, maybe what I felt in this scene is what people felt throughout the movie.
Yeah.
And that's why they like it, because I like that scene. That scene is interesting to me. Mm-hmm. So
it is funny. And then he leaves the studio and he's walking out, and then the camera, like, moves up to make sure that the sunset is, in the right, or the horizon is in the right position.
Yeah, it was funny. It was an actually interesting scene to me, more than a scene of, I don't know, Seth Rogen pinning down his mom to cut her nails.
Yeah.
That went on for like 3.5 minutes, 4 minutes.
Yeah, it was long.
And I don't know. The movie's fine overall. a movie that would be just as fine if anyone else made it but wouldn't get the praise. Or even if it got the praise, it wouldn't get the award recognition. And I probably wouldn't have watched it. I was not excited to watch it. The first 10 minutes felt incredibly long to me, but the movie as a whole didn't. I know it felt long to you. It is long, like, just objectively, it's 2.5 hours of a drama. A family drama at that.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it did move slow at the beginning, but I guess I got used to the pace and the way that they were acting. Even though I still don't love the acting, I got used to it. And it made it feel shorter for me. Like, it kind of went by. I wasn't having too much of an issue, but I was also not having a lot of fun. So it was kind of just mediocre 6 out of 10 for me.
Yeah, I also gave it a 6 out of 10. I do kind of think that it's closer to a 7 than a 5 or 7. It's almost a 7, just based on, like, if it was just a little bit more entertaining, like if it had a little bit more substance to its plot, or, you know, I think it had to do with mostly the plot, where it is just kind of, like you said, matter of fact. I think I would like it a little bit more to push it up to that 7, but I mean, it's not a bad film, you know. I just don't think that, like, if I wanted to watch a movie like this, I would 100% watch Cinema Paradiso over this.
Cinema Paradiso is more a movie about movie makers.
Yeah.
And about movie making, and about the experience of going to the theater, and about an actual theater. And this is not that. This is a coming-of-age story. It is Spielberg's story, loosely. I don't know how loosely. I don't know his life. But this got 7 nominations at this year's Academy Awards. Yeah,
it got Best Production Design.
Which I didn't even realize it got, because I don't think there was anything too notable.
Yeah, I
about
agree.
The production design.
I also got Best Original Score for John Williams, and I mean, if you have John Williams score your movie, you're probably going to get that nomination.
Which Spielberg has quite often.
Yes.
Spielberg works with him. He also works with the cinematographer all the time. So this is kind of, you know, he had everything going for him. Mm-hmm. Everything he wanted. He also got Original Screenplay, which I guess that one makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I personally don't think that the screenplay is really all that good. I will agree that I like the parts where he is creating movies and where he is, like, showing them to people. I like those parts of the storytelling more than I like pretty much anything else.
He also got Best Director, Steven Spielberg. So he got 3 nominations, because he got one as a writer, one as a director, and one as a producer.
Yeah, for the movie.
So, director, I mean, it's Steven Spielberg, which I guess historically is not even, like, a big winner. He has 2 wins as a director and, like, 1 as a producer, so it's not like Steven Spielberg is guaranteed to win, but his name is always around. It's always floating around.
Yeah.
The award season, and it makes sense that he would get director. What doesn't make sense to me is the 2 acting nominations.
Yeah. So I really wanted to like Michelle Williams.
I did not like it at all.
I said I really wanted to. Not that I did. I wanted to like her in this, but I just felt like she kind of... I recently just watched The Greatest Showman, and I get the same type of vibes from those characters. The way that she plays them, even though they're very different characters. Like, very different, completely... not the same at all in terms of, like, personality, but they are, like, played the same from her. So, I mean, maybe that's just me because I had just watched her in that movie, but it just kind of felt very similar, and I didn't like that.
I just didn't like her because I didn't like her. I just didn't like her. I didn't buy it. I didn't like anyone in this movie. Honestly, the acting was the weakest aspect all the way through.
Yeah, and then it got a supporting actor nomination for Judd Hirsch, which confuses the heck out of me because he's in the movie for like 10 minutes, like max. He's not in it for very long, and I feel like if we can give him a Best Supporting Actor nomination, that's like you could do the same thing for David Lynch as
right.
John Ford in this. Like I feel like they have the same collective amount of lines.
Yeah, and acting categories this year were pretty stacked, especially Best Actress, where there's a lot of...
Yeah, there's a lot of performances that could have...
And there's a lot of drama surrounding the nominations.
Yeah, especially Best Actress. Like, I really...
And people, I think, are blaming the wrong person there. I think they should be blaming Michelle Williams. She's the one taking up a spot.
Kind of.
And Judd Hirsch is also the one taking up a spot.
Yeah, it's baffling. So I did kind of, like, look it up just to kind of see if he had a nomination before, if this was kind of more like, oh, he's been around a while, let's give him a nod. But he was nominated for Ordinary People in like 1980. So I don't know, maybe I really don't know like why voters voted for him. Like I said, I don't know everything surrounding like the politics of it, but
yeah, it is a lot of politics, and I feel like this has to be political to some extent, right? It just doesn't make sense to me that people watched him for 8 minutes and like, that's a standout. Like, he was funny enough, and he was he was
impactful to the story.
He was the best actor in this, but he was there for 8 minutes.
Yeah,
he was definitely the best actor, though. I can't deny that.
Yeah, 100%.
But
it's kind of like, yeah, why bother?
Yeah, this movie has, and then Best Picture. That's the last nomination. That's too many nominations. I get screenplay. I even get director, maybe sound, but that's about it for me.
Oh, you mean score?
Score. That's score, right.
Yeah.
Those are fine, but the rest is just pushing it.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just...
Production design, I would love to understand why, because I didn't see anything that stood out.
I guess maybe the setups of, like, him creating movies, maybe? I don't know. That would be my guess. I think those are the most interesting, like, sets to look at.
I suppose, but it's not that it's a movie that I think it's bad in any sense except the acting. I just think it's so bland all the way through. It's so forgettable. I liked him on set shooting movies. I like him shooting the kids doing the Western. Mm-hmm. I like him shooting on the beach. That's about it. Mm-hmm. And I like the John Ford cameo thing. Mm-hmm. Where like I really like everything else I was just mostly okay with. And then there was other scenes where I think they went on for too long. Mostly the interactions between Seth Rogen and Michelle Williams.
I agree. But I think that's all that we are going to be talking about this movie until we give our thoughts and opinions on our predictions this year. So definitely stay tuned for that. We still have a couple more noms to go through. So don't forget to like, subscribe, leave us a comment if you want to on the platform that you're listening to us on. And we will see you next time.